Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Fintech Talks. It's your host, Laura Gibson-Lamothe, here at Money20 in Europe, in Amsterdam. Really excited to have the conversation with you both today. Appreciate your time. Can you just first introduce yourselves and your role and what you do?
Yeah. Hi, guys. I am Reshmi. I lead Agentic Commerce at Worldpay, now Global Payments.
And my name is Nabil. I lead enterprise growth and partnerships, also at Worldpay, now Global Payments.
Tying back to Atlanta, the presence there is strong, and we have a lot of folks that are supporting and working with global payments. For you guys here, I know you were speaking, and there's a lot of collaboration and conversations you're having. What are you hearing, and what are some of the themes that you guys are taking away from this year's event?
Yeah, love coming to these events. You get to see so many new companies and what everyone's focused on. I think the 2 or 3 themes that I'm hearing from this year's conference is one, agentic commerce and agentic AI generally. There's so many unique use cases of AI that has a lot of promise in optimizing how we do various processes over the next year or two. Lots of startups, so that's been super interesting. The second one is stablecoins and that infrastructure. There's a lot of conversation happening around how can that help optimize money movement and how can we make that better? I don't know, Nabil, what do you think?
Stablecoins and AI. I feel like you can't go to a payments conference in 2026 without both of those things being front and center. Other than that, I think a lot of discussion around payment performance, which is interesting. People talking about authorization rates, lower friction, better authentication. So that's been interesting. And then related to, but slightly different than stablecoins, is just more efficient money movement, like better use of real-time rails around the world now that those systems are more prevalent. A lot of talk about real-time payments in the US, which are now starting to take off. So yeah, really interesting.
Yeah. Question around the stablecoin piece, I guess, carrying that theme forward. And I love how you guys are connecting. One is enabling or helping facilitate the other. But from a stablecoin perspective, how do you see fintechs start to adopt that capability? I saw there's several announcements that happened from
so many.
Money20 and partnerships, and people are just announcing new news. But what does that mean from a fintech perspective to be able to adopt?
Yeah, it depends on your business a little bit. So I think the killer use case right now seems to be cross-border payments, particularly in certain currency corridors where traditional rails are slow or companies don't want to pre-position liquidity because they don't want too much exposure to that currency or whatnot. So that seems to be where a lot of the growth is, that cross-border payments use case. What I'm more excited about is actually like the internal treasury and liquidity management side of it. A lot of fintechs, particularly those that are operating in multiple geographies and currencies, we need to move money around the world constantly. And it's hard to do that when, again, there's not connectivity between those different currency systems and payment systems. And so stablecoins has been acting as a nice kind of connectivity layer to allow companies to, again, position cash more effectively and things like that. So I think that space is going to be really interesting to watch over the next year or two.
Oh man, I think about like settlement and, batch processing and like
that's even a whole separate thing. I mean, yeah, most of the large scale payments today are all batch based, right? But I think we're slowly moving towards a world where it can become potentially transaction based. So for example, the card networks are looking at how do you do things like transaction by transaction clearing rather than batch based clearing. And then how do you translate that into more frequent settlements and things like that? So,
and then thinking about AI, like what excites you? I saw your profile on LinkedIn. I did a little bit of research and your journey coming into Worldpay, now Global Payments. What kind of keeps you motivated and excited about what AI is doing now in the industry?
Yeah, I'll say 2 things. One is related to what Nabil said on stablecoin use cases and tying it back together. There's a third use case that I'm super excited about, which is machine-to-machine payments or programmatic payments. For example, let's say you are doing some research and you've got a $10 budget as a student and you need to call or use certain assets like read an article, get a research paper, but you don't want to subscribe to all of those things. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a way to, let's say, pay 10 cents to read an article once and a small amount of money to spend and have your AI agent go and negotiate those with these companies out there, right? So the easiest way, I suppose, to make that happen from a commercial perspective is like stablecoin infrastructure, something like that, because traditional money rails are not necessarily built for very, very small transactions. So that's an interesting use case. But thinking agentic commerce wise, I think what I'm excited about is the cognitive load going away. So humans can then focus on the value of the commerce, right? For example, I don't want to think about scheduling a plumber and paying for it. I just want my water in my house to work well. So if an AI agent could schedule those things on a regular basis and manage the commerce side of things, then I don't have to worry about it. Or I don't want to have to search through hundreds of things to figure out what my 13-year-old niece would like because I've not been 13 for a long time. So if it can do that research for me and suggest some options, like here are what all the 13-year-olds are liking these days and which ones you want to pick based on my budget, it's doing a lot of the thinking for me, and I can focus on the fun things and not the payments, not the research. And that's what I'm excited about, to help humans with the cognitive load to free up our time to then do other things that we like more.
I mean, speaking of cognitive load, I have a lot of it this week, and I've been using AI for efficiencies. When you hear all of that, do you think risk? Do you think things that you have to overcome operationally to really consider that journey to get to that?
Yeah, I think it depends what you're using it for, right? I think in something like product discovery, right, it's fairly low risk in the sense that the humans doing the review of what the AI research is producing and then ultimately making the decision on what product or service to buy. I think where the risk comes into it, particularly in financial services, is if you start automating certain things like fully using agents or AI, you have to have a very high degree of confidence that it's going to do what you expect it to do. So I think that's what I'm hearing from policymakers and regulators and other folks in the industry is the capabilities are amazing, but how do you clearly say to the regulator or say to your customer that what's going on in the back end with the agent is what you expect it to do. So everyone uses that term hallucination. Hallucination is not maybe that risky when you're looking at what plumber to hire or what product to buy for your 13-year-old niece, but it's super risky if you're doing automated customer onboarding or like investigating fraud or transaction monitoring or something, right? So you got to think about what it's actually being used for, and the risk profile is quite different.
Well, and what I'm hearing from you also is like not everything justifies throwing AI at it. So there's certain processes, and obviously there's an assessment naturally that has to happen, balancing customer friction, risk, whatever other areas that are operational efficiencies as well, and cost savings on top of that. And how are you guys currently using AI and advancing some of the conversations that you're, talking about, especially from cognitive load perspective? I'm interested to see maybe operationally and internally what you guys are offering your clients today and that roadmap of what you're planning to offer strategically in the future.
Yeah, we have 3 broad uses of AI within the company or applications. One is agentic commerce, which is like helping our merchants accept payments from an AI in a trusted way, our own products. So we've got optimization products, we've got fraud products, various other things that we offer our consumers, customers, and merchants. And how do we make those products better with AI? Can we identify fraud in a faster way, in a more dynamic way? Can we figure out better ways to optimize so authorizations rates go up for our merchants, right? So using AI for that purpose is the second use case. And the third use case is internal, so productivity improvements. So I know we use a lot of AI tools for coding. We use it for like CDD, customer due diligence, anti-money laundering, onboarding, all of those use cases that you can think of where something is done repeatedly by humans and it's easy to perhaps delegate to an agent because you know what's expected and it's not like a complex decision making involved in there. Those are the things that we're looking at. But what I will say is like when you do move trillions of dollars, there's a responsibility to make sure that that's done well. So you can't afford to make mistakes. It's like, whoops, like for 5 hours we went down, right? We can't do that. So it is also done in a fair bit of controlled and observed way. We've got an AI governance, etc. Just because like when you're moving people's money, you have to be very careful in how you do it.
That's a good point. And thinking about what you mentioned earlier from a treasury perspective and thinking about moving $1 trillion, which I wish I had in my bank account.
Managing liquidity for a global payments company at that scale is complicated, right? We've got thousands of bank accounts in hundreds of currencies in lots of different geographies across different products and services. And so like the number of variables and the complication of that web is like quite immense. But I think to Reshmi's point, like a lot of that money movement falls in a kind of regulated perimeter, right? And so when we look at AI in treasury or finance, I think it's quite interesting. A lot of companies are finding it quite effective for like forecasting as an example. So like, taking some of the guesswork out, or, doing it maybe more efficiently or more quickly than a human can. But then the actual money movement is still being done by a human, because with any sort of money movement at that scale, there's very strict workflows around who needs to approve what needs to get documented, all that sort of stuff. So I today haven't heard many companies where that are using AI or agents to actually move the money itself, like initiate the transaction. But a lot of them are using it to speed up processes like forecasting, which are in and around that workflow.
The first thought was regulation. There's just so much of it. You got state regulation, like individual states regulation. You have things like obviously the Genius Act, developing the states. I'm hearing so much here. And to be honest, so much of my career was focused on seeing what's happening abroad and leveraging that as learnings and insights into the future possibilities of what could come and influence the work that I'm doing. But from your perspective, how do you control maintaining all of that and that balancing act of regulation and innovation in a very vast mixed footprint geography of influences?
A big team of people with a lot of knowledge. Look, like any large financial services company, right, is going to have hundreds or thousands of people across legal and compliance, and for good reason, right? Financial services is up there with healthcare and transportation, or some of the other industries where trust is everything. And so that trust often comes through regulation. Implicit backing from the government that if this company is licensed, that implies a degree of trust, right? But you need to earn that. That's true. Earning that takes work, and work means people and technology.
That's so true. We're at time, and I just wanted to ask, I guess, one wrap-up question. Obviously, with me and my role, focus on future fintech workforce for the industry, what recommendations or insights or guidance do you guys have for this next generation?
Oh, experiment. That's what I'd say. Download whichever AI tool sounds good to you and start typing. Ask it a question, because no one will know whether it's a stupid question or not. So like, ask a question of, how do I start coding? How do I build a website? And maybe prompt it to be like, I know nothing about this. What tools do I need? Walk me through this as I'm 5-year-old, or whatever it is, and start from there. Because if you don't, the barrier becomes higher and higher. And the cost of experimentation, at least right now, compute is given for free, or like close to free for a lot of people. Take advantage of it and like try out as much as you can, and that'll help you be better positioned to go into a professional role in the space.
I love that. Thank you. What about you?
Yeah, you got to have the AI competency, that's for sure. The other thing I'd say is don't forget the human element. What's interesting is, today, if you want to, if you're a business and you want to go buy payment services or fraud and authentication services or foreign exchange services or whatever, you got a lot of options. But at the end of the day, people are buying from people.
That's true.
And I think AI, with all the productivity enhancements, particularly in like the engineering space, there's going to be even more options going forward, right? It's going to become the marginal cost of creating a new technology product is going down. Right. So there's going to be more options, and with big purchases that are critical infrastructure material to your business, I think the human element's going to continue to be really important. So invest in the relationships, build your network.
I love that.
My advice.
I love it, because you amplify the message we always try to give to students, and the network matters, being curious, and getting your hands on. I mean, we have a tech fluent and now growing increasingly AI fluent generation that's already testing and learning and building.
That's table stakes.
It is. It really is.
Table stakes.
Oh yeah. I feel encouraged and motivated by our conversation. I really appreciate you guys, your time today. And for those listening in, keep tuned with the Fintech Talks. You'll have more from us coming up here soon as we wrap up Money 2020 Europe 2026. Thank you.
Thank you.